He saw a blind old woman, a useless relic of a forgotten war. He snapped her cane to teach her a lesson, but he didn't know her son teaches men like him what the law truly means. In the quiet dawn of a small American town, Captain Evelyn Reed, U.S. Army, retired, began her morning walk. At 78, she moved with a grace that belied the two truths that defined her life. She had served with valor in the muddy, chaotic field hospitals of Vietnam, and she was now completely blind, a delayed consequence of a service-related injury decades ago. To the townspeople, she was just Evelyn, the quiet woman who navigated the sidewalks with a focused dignity that few could match. They didn't see the captain in her anymore. They didn't know the hands that now lightly gripped her walking cane had once sutured wounds under helicopter fire, or that the ears that listened to the birdsong had once filtered out the sounds of war to hear a soldier's last whisper. She wore her history not on her sleeve, but in her spine, in the ramrod straight posture that had never bent to age or adversity. Her cane was more than a tool, it was a testament. Carved from polished oak, it was a retirement gift from her unit in the Army Nurse Corps. Near the handle, her name, rank, and the Corps insignia were delicately etched into the wood. It was a piece of her history, a symbol of her service, a tangible connection to the woman she had been. It tapped a steady, rhythmic beat on the pavement, a song of resilience. Each morning, Evelyn walked the town square, her path a map drawn by memory and resolve. She walked to feel the sun on her face, to feel the world move around her, and to honor the promise she'd made to herself long ago, to never stop moving forward. But on this day, a shadow was waiting, a man in a uniform who saw not a hero, but an inconvenience, and he was about to desecrate the very symbol of her honor. The shadow took the form of Officer Clean. He stood near the park's central fountain, his presence a stark, rigid line against the soft morning light. He watched Evelyn approach, his expression a mixture of impatience and disdain. He didn't see a decorated veteran, he saw an old woman moving too slowly, an obstacle in his orderly world. He let her get closer before he spoke, his voice intentionally loud, startling her. "Ma'am. You shouldn't be out here alone." It wasn't a question of concern, it was an assertion of power. Evelyn stopped, turning her head toward the sound. "Good morning, officer. I am quite all right. I've walked this path for 20 years. Her tone was polite, yet firm, the voice of a captain who was used to being in control of her own space. Officer Clean took a step closer, invading that space. He let out a short, contemptuous huff. 20 years is a long time. Things change. He looked her up and down, his eyes lingering on the insignia on her cane. This town has no time for relics. The insult was clear, sharp, and aimed with precision. It wasn't just about her age, it was about her service. "My service is not a relic, officer." "It is a fact," she replied, her voice losing none of its composure, though her grip tightened on the oak handle. "Is that so?" he sneered, his arrogance swelling. "Well, I'm the law here, and your facts don't impress me." He gestured vaguely at the park around them. "This is my town square, my beat. And you, with this," he pointed a finger at her cane, "are a liability. Times have changed, Captain. Your old medals don't get you a free pass here." He was enjoying this, the slow, deliberate act of stripping a person of their dignity. He saw the slight tremor in her hand, the way her shoulders stiffened. He saw vulnerability and, like a predator, he decided to strike. He had no idea the strength he was confronting, nor the storm he was about to unleash. He thought he was putting an old soldier in her place, but he was merely setting the stage for his own downfall. "Let me see that," Officer Clean commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. Before Evelyn could protest, his hand shot out and closed around her cane, just below her own. The sudden, aggressive tug threw her off balance. Her fingers, stiff with age, lost their grip. "What are you doing?" she gasped, a thread of panic finally piercing her composure. She reached out into the empty air, her world suddenly unsteady. He held the oak cane in his two hands, examining the engraved Nurse Corps insignia with a dismissive smirk. "Just inspecting it for safety, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Can't have you walking around with a potential weapon." And then, with a single, brutal motion, he brought the cane down over his knee. The crack was sickeningly loud in the quiet morning air. It wasn't just the sound of splintering wood, it was the sound of a promise being broken, of a legacy being desecrated. The polished oak, which had survived decades as a symbol of honor, snapped in two. He tossed the broken pieces at her feet. The piece with her name and rank clattered on the pavement. The other half, the handle she had held for years, landed silently in the grass. "There," Officer Clean said, his voice thick with satisfaction. "Safer now. Have a nice day, Captain." He turned and walked away without a backward glance, leaving Evelyn standing alone in the center of the square. She was frozen, her breath caught in her throat. Her hand, the one that had held the cane, remained outstretched, trembling. Around her, the town was waking up. A few early joggers slowed, their eyes wide. A young man at a coffee cart stared, his phone in his hand. But no one spoke. No one moved to help. The silence was its own form of violence. Slowly, painfully, Evelyn knelt. Her fingers brushed against the splintered wood, the sharp edges a cruel mockery of the smooth, familiar handle. This wasn't just a cane. It was her service, her history, her dignity. And a man wearing a uniform of public trust had just snapped it in half and thrown it on the ground like garbage. Evelyn didn't know how long she knelt there, the broken pieces of her life in her hands. Eventually, she gathered them, stood up with a resolve that defied her shaking body, and made her way home, navigating by sheer will. She placed the two halves on her mantelpiece, a broken sword from a forgotten battle. Later that day, a hesitant knock came at her door. It was Leo, the 19-year-old who ran the coffee cart. He stood on her porch, his eyes downcast, a phone clutched in his hand. "Mrs. Reed," he stammered, I'm so sorry. I saw everything. I was scared, but I recorded it." He played the video. Evelyn stood, unseeing, and listened. She heard the officer's contemptuous voice. She heard her own calm replies. And then she heard it, the sharp, definitive crack that had echoed in her soul. When it was over, she simply nodded. "Thank you, Leo. It takes courage to bear witness." The next day brought another knock, this one more firm, more official. It was Detective Karen Elliott, a plainclothed investigator whose tired eyes held a spark of fierce determination. "Captain Reed," she began, stepping inside. "I'm not here about a broken cane. I'm here about a broken officer. I've been building a case against Officer Clean for over a year for abuse of power. I have complaints from a dozen different citizens, intimidating a small business owner, harassing teenagers, targeting the homeless. But none of them would stick. He's careful. He leaves no evidence." The detective's gaze fell on the splintered cane on the mantelpiece. "Until now. I heard about what happened." A witness came forward with a video. She looked back at Evelyn. "What he did to you was cruel and unforgivable. But your identity, ma'am, gives us an opportunity we've never had. You are not just another citizen he can discredit. You are a decorated war veteran. Your word carries weight. Your honor is unimpeachable." Detective Elliott leaned forward, her voice low. "If you are willing to make a statement, to let us use this video, you won't just be fighting for yourself. You'll be fighting for everyone he has ever bullied into silence. You can help us stop him for good." Evelyn stood straighter, the captain returning to her posture. The fight, it seemed, wasn't over after all. "Tell me what you need me to do, detective," she said. Hundreds of miles away, in a sterile Washington, D.C. office, Assistant U.S. Attorney Ethan Reed was reviewing documents for a federal racketeering case when his personal phone buzzed. It was an anonymous email with a video file attached. The subject line read, "Your mother. Liberty Square." He clicked play. The shaky footage, the familiar backdrop of his hometown park, and then, his mother's voice, calm and dignified. Then Officer Clean's, dripping with scorn. Ethan's blood ran cold. He watched, his knuckles white on his desk, as the officer snatched the cane. He heard the snap. The sound was a detonation in his carefully ordered world. That wasn't just a piece of wood. It was his mother's honor. It was a symbol of the service his family had revered his entire life. It was a piece of her very soul, and this man had desecrated it with a smug smile. He didn't just assault an elderly blind woman, he attacked a captain of the United States Army. Ethan didn't finish the video. He closed his laptop, canceled his afternoon meetings, and booked the next flight home. The racketeering case could wait. This was no longer about a stranger's crime. This was about his family. This was about his mother. When he walked through the door of her small, quiet house, he found her sitting by the window. The broken cane lay on the table beside her. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice soft. He knelt beside her chair, taking her trembling hand in his. "Why didn't you call me? This isn't your fight, Ethan. I didn't want to bring this trouble to you." He looked from her face to the splintered oak. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely showed, "my entire career, everything I have built, is based on the honor you and Dad taught me. This isn't your trouble. This is an attack on our family, on everything we stand for." He rose to his feet, the quiet lawyer replaced by a son whose protective instincts had been fully ignited. "He didn't know who you were, Mom. But he's about to find out who I am." The battle lines had been drawn. The full weight of the U.S. Department of Justice, in spirit if not in official capacity, was about to fall on one arrogant, small-town cop. Ethan didn't waste time. He met with Detective Elliott, reviewed her files, and understood the landscape. A formal complaint was not enough. To break through the wall of silence and indifference that protected men like Clean, they needed to change the narrative in the court of public opinion. He called a press conference at the town's community center. He didn't alert the national media, just the local paper, a regional news station, and key community leaders. But word spread like fire. The room was packed. Ethan stepped to the podium, not as a prosecutor, but as a son. He was calm, composed, and wore a simple suit. "Good afternoon," he began. "My name is Ethan Reed. Some of you know me. Most of you know my mother, Evelyn Reed." He paused, letting the name settle in the room. "You know her as the woman who walks the square every morning. What some of you may not know is that she is also Captain Evelyn Reed, who served this country with honor in Vietnam." He held up a clear evidence bag containing the two broken pieces of the oak cane. This was given to her by her unit in recognition of that service. "Last Tuesday, Officer Stephen Clean of our own police department snapped it in two, and left it on the ground at her feet." A wave of shock rippled through the audience. "This is not about a broken stick," Ethan's voice grew stronger, filled with a cold, righteous anger. "This is about a broken trust. This is about a man in a uniform using his power not to protect, but to humiliate a decorated veteran. An elderly, blind woman. He didn't just break her cane, he attacked the very honor that badge is supposed to represent." He looked directly into the news camera. "I have spent my career upholding the law. And I am telling you now, what happened in our town square was not a mistake. It was an abuse of power. And it will not stand. We will pursue this through every official channel. Officer Clean's actions are a stain on every good officer who serves with integrity. We are here today to say that in this town, we respect our veterans. We protect our elders. And we hold those in power accountable. The silence ends today." The oversight board hearing was a formality that suddenly became the main event. Officer Clean sat with his union lawyer, looking more annoyed than concerned. He'd weathered complaints before. But he had never faced an adversary like Ethan Reed. Ethan, acting as his mother's official representative, didn't raise his voice. He was surgical. When Clean's lawyer claimed the officer felt threatened by the cane, Ethan calmly presented Evelyn's military service record, complete with commendations for bravery. "Are you asking this board to believe," Ethan stated, his voice echoing in the quiet room, "that your client, a trained police officer, felt physically threatened by a 78-year-old, decorated Army captain who is medically blind?" He then played the video on a large screen. The crack of the cane snapping filled the room. It was damning. "That sound," Ethan said, turning to the board, "is the only threat present in this entire incident. It is the sound of an officer violating his oath. It is the sound of a community's trust being broken." He presented sworn affidavits from the other victims Detective Elliott had found. A pattern of abuse, now brought into the light. Officer Clean's defense crumbled. Part 8, The Legacy of Honor. Officer Clean was immediately suspended pending a criminal investigation. The story became a national symbol of the fight for veterans' respect. But in their small town, the change was more personal. People stopped Evelyn on the street, not with pity, but with reverence. They thanked her for her courage. The town council, under immense public pressure, voted to install a new bench in the square, right where the incident happened. Ethan and Evelyn were there for the dedication. The bronze plaque was simple, but its message was powerful. It read, "In honor of Captain Evelyn Reed. Her walk never faltered, her honor never broke." As his mother ran her fingers over the engraved words, Ethan knew this was more than just a victory. It was a restoration. The story of what happened that day would serve as a permanent reminder: you do not disrespect the hero in this town. Not anymore. Our veterans and elders deserve to be treated with dignity. If you believe their honor should always be defended, please share this story. Comment with "honor" below to pay respect to all those who have served.